Hello, hello. Welcome to the Zell Visiting Writers series. My name is Dee Matthews. I'm the Assistant Director of the Helen Zell Writers Program. The Writers series is a curation of some of the finest writers in contemporary literature, and we're really happy to be able to bring them to Ann Arbor. Tonight we have Nina McConigley, introduced by Professor Claire Vaye Watkins. Before we get started, I'm going to ask each of you to make sure that your phones are turned off or any electrical devices don't buzz or ding or any of the things that they do. I always like this moment of silence where everybody has to go and check their phones. Anyway, without further ado, Professor Claire Vaye Watkins.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. And thanks once again to Dee and Maya for making this series happen. It's one of my favorite parts about being here. Our guest tonight, Nina SWAMIDOSS McConigley, earned an MA in English from the University of Wyoming and an MFA in creative writing from the University of Houston, where she was an Imprint Brown Foundation Fellow. She serves on the board of the Wyoming Arts Council and teaches at the University of Wyoming and the Warren Wilson MFA program for writers. Her work has appeared in the New York Times, Orion, Virginia Quarterly, Salon, American Short Fiction, and many, many others. Her first book, the story collection Cowboys and East Indians, which I have here for you, won both the 2014 Penn Open Book Award and the High Plains Book Award. I suspect you are probably impressed by the former, as I am, but knowing Nina, I suspect she is as honored by the latter. Born in Singapore and raised in Wyoming, she is an unabashed daughter of the High Plains. Her stories turn a sagely and humane eye to the East Indians of Wyoming, a world within a world most people don't even know exists, to borrow a phrase from Brad Watson. If you've yet to read McConigley, you'll soon discover she is more James Welch than Annie Proulx, refusing to write the postcard Wyoming, the one whose scenery is salve to its hardship and alienation. Taking on a region famous for its beauty, the stories frequent instead Walmarts, oil rigs, chain motels, casinos, and basement bomb shelters. Reading them, one has to stop and think, Toto, I have a feeling we're not at Brokeback Mountain anymore. Nina's Wyoming is not Ang Lee's Wyoming. Jake Gyllenhaal is nowhere in sight, and for once, I don't miss him. This is a book pulled taut by the tension between affection and pain. A book whose epigraph comes from one of my own childhood favorites, The Little House on the Prairie. A book every little girl coming of age west of the 100th meridian wants to believe was written just for her. It reads, Ma despised Indians. To be excluded from the midst of the place that made you, a place you love. To be mistaken for indigenous and somehow simultaneously rejected as unforgivably alien. To be relegated to the distant, all but invisible reaches of the margins in a place that calls itself the equality state. These are the impossible questions raised by this bold, compassionate writer. We are so very honored to have here with us tonight. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Nina McConigley.
Sorry, I want to set my timer. That was beautiful intro. Thank you so much, Claire. I always feel really funny hearing myself introduced because it makes me feel so formal and accomplished, and I don't feel either most of the time. Claire and I were we were scholars together at the Sewanee Writers Conference in 2010, way before we ever had books, and it just is really a pleasure to be here. So I'm going to read from my story collection, Cowboys and East Indians, and for those of you who I didn't meet earlier today, I grew up in Casper, Wyoming, which is dead center in the state. And it's also a place that's very mythic because the Oregon Trail, the California Trail, the Mormon Trail, and Pony Express all went through there. In fact, the BLM has a big trail museum that you can tour if you ever come through. And it's a place where a lot of people have crossed through. And when I first started thinking about this book, and thinking about Little House on the Prairie, I always thought of my mom and dad as sort of new pioneers coming into a place that was pretty rural and making a life when there's just no other Indians, or East Indians in Wyoming. So I'm gonna read from a story called Pomp and Circumstances, and it's just, oh Lord, it's just an excerpt, so you won't get the whole story, but I will read from it. Sorry, I don't know what I'm saying here. Okay, Lord, I don't know why I'm nervous all of a sudden. Okay, Pomp and Circumstances. The Shirley Basin seemed to be a big stretch of nothing that fell between Casper and Laramie. There was no cell phone coverage and not many houses, except a few small ranches slipped between strips of cottonwood-lined creeks and the bases of rising hills. The basin at one time had been a forest, lush, tropical, a swamp. Now every summer and into fall, people combed the sagebrush and scrubbed for petrified wood, for a small piece of Eden preserved. The basin is so rich with uranium that ghost towns once filled with miners lap at the edges. Low prices and oversupply has all but cut short business. In the early 90s, black-footed ferrets were released here. Once thought extinct, these little bandits thrive, feeding off prairie dogs and roaming the plains at night. Raja and Chitra Sen are heading across the basin to a graduation in Laramie. Their 8-year-old son Hari lies sleeping in the back seat. The graduation is for Raja's co-worker's son, Luke Larson. Richard Larson is proud of his son and has invited everyone in the office to attend the graduation. Raja is the only one going. 1, because he's never been to an American graduation and thinks it will be good for Hari, and 2, because he finds Richard Larson hard to say no to. For months, Richard Larson has insisted upon calling him Senator. He has done this since he first saw Raja's name on a thin wooden nameplate on his desk, Raja Sen. Now all the other engineers in the office and even Bobby the secretary call Raja Senator. It is a nickname that sticks, that perseveres like a fossil. It is Chitra who states the obvious, Senator, didn't you tell them you're already a king? Raja says nothing. He is the only Indian at the office. Hari is the only Indian at his school. Chitra is one of 3 Indians in their house. They are one of maybe 6 Indian families in Casper. She perhaps has it the easiest. The drive is a little less than 2.5 hours, and they have been silent for most of it. Raja Sen thinks his wife is rude to the Larsons, as she had not wanted to come to the graduation. He thinks she's being difficult when it comes to making American friends. Raja knows Chitra has been to the Larsons' house 3 times. One of those times they went together. It was a holiday party, an event for which they were instructed to bring a white elephant gift. Chitra had selected a soapstone elephant from the shelf in their house. On its flanks there was an inlay of garnet-colored stones, but at the party they realized they were not to bring elephants at all. They had gone home with a plastic reindeer. When you lifted its tail, small chocolates dropped out of its behind. Hari had screamed with pleasure. Chitra has told Raja she has been invited to tea at the Larsons twice without him, with not just Richard Larson, but his wife Nancy, a thin, tanned woman who has a knack for matching outfits. She has deep-set eyes and wears a great deal of eyeliner. Chitra also wears eyeliner, kohl she has brought from Kolkata. Chitra's eyes look sleepy, the kohl making her exotic. Nancy just looks startled. Both times the Larsons had her over, Raja was out of town. Richard Larson had planned that. They actually drank coffee and not tea. And the second time Nancy Larson had baked, she had made a stack of lemon bars so thickly sprinkled with powdered sugar that Chitra looked as if talcum powder covered her sari. Chitra has said little about the teas except she does not want to go back to their house again. If there's an office function, she'd rather stay home. Raja is sure Chitra has done something to offend them. At the Christmas party, Chitra, who was not used to wine, told outlandish stories of India. She told Richard and Nancy Larson that Hijras had danced at her and Raja's wedding, that they were good luck. Raja Sen saw Richard's face as she explained them to him. Raja is sure that at the last tea something must have been said, as Richard too has not mentioned Chitra.
As they drive, Chitra thinks the snow fences look like abandoned snakeskins in the grass. They curve and bend and then stop abruptly. These wooden skeletons hold more than the skin of winter snow. Along this stretch, some ranchers use the fences to create large drifts in the basin. It gives them a ready supply of water in the spring. It is still spring now, and the prairie is in a green-up. Magpies lunge along the roadside. The smell of sagebrush is sweet. Plodding red Hereford and black Angus populate patches of the plain. They are loose stock, as this is open range. Up in the hills and on Elk Mountain, which rises before them, snow still sits on the peaks, a bit like Nancy Larson's lemon bars, except underneath the peaks are rock and preserved things. Nancy's lemon bars, due to high-altitude baking and dry air, only stay good for a day. When the Larsons first invited Chitra to tea, she was surprised to find Richard at home. The invitation had come from Nancy alone. They lived in a modest ranch house on the east side of Casper, and without all the holiday decorations, the house was spare. The living room contained a cloud-like couch. The tables all had ornate legs with curving columns. There were prints on the walls of Indian warriors wearing headdresses. There are the heads of deer watching them. Richard is a good hunter, and every fall fills their freezer with antelope, deer, and sometimes elk. Nancy brings Chitra a steaming cup of coffee. On the table is cream in a pitcher shaped like a cow. The cream comes out of its mouth. "Do you like Casper? Have you settled?" Nancy asked. "Yes," said Chitra, and she meant it. Before they lived in Casper, they lived in Toronto for almost a year. Before that, they were in India. Toronto exhausted her. It was full of other Bengalis, and every weekend they went to Indian party after Indian party, parties where satellite TV blared cricket or Indian movies, parties where all the wives would put on their best saris and jewelry. Chitra would spend hours preparing food. Would spend hours preparing food. There were parties where endless cups of tea were drunk. The talk would always be of India, of the best schools to send their children. Here in Casper, they know few other Indians, and in many ways it's a relief. She can wear jeans and cotton tops, and when they are invited to any function, she simply goes to the bakery of the grocery store and buys donuts by the dozens, cookies with frosting the color of God's. Richard Larson does not join them at first. He comes in after their coffee has been drunk, when Chitra is admiring Nancy's quilts, which she has spread across an overstuffed pink chair in the living room. "So the senator's in Riverton. I hope he's not gambling away your fortune," Richard Larson laughs. Chitra does not know of the casino there, but she laughs along. Richard takes a hard look at Chitra's sari. She had worn it because it felt polite, because she was going visiting. It's a simple one, blue rayon with a series of dancing birds on the border. "I like your costume, your dress," he says. "I like the one you wore to the Christmas party." She's not sure if Richard Larson is flirting or stating a fact. She had worn one of her wedding saris to the Christmas party. It was purple silk, ornate with heavy gold work. It had been stiffly packed for months and so starched she felt she couldn't walk properly. "Thank you." There was quiet at the table. It was just past lunchtime. A clock in the kitchen ticked a little beat. "These fabrics sure are pretty," Chitra said. She pointed to the calicos and patterns of the quilt. "Yes, Nancy has an eye for color." And then Richard Larson asked her for something she could never tell Raja. He asks if he can try on a sari. By the time they hit Medicine Bow, Hari is awake and asking to stop. They bypass the Virginian Hotel, which means nothing to them, and instead go to a small gas station. The inside smells of smoke. They buy sweet coffee and chocolate and then get on the road again. Raja takes in the wind turbines outside Medicine Bow. The town was almost bordered by them. And driving into the place, they look like cartwheeling crosses, marking some sort of sacred space. He thinks he's clever to think this and begins to tell Chitra his observation, but instead tells Hari, "Do you see those crosses?" Hari scans out the window of their Honda and says blankly, "They're wind turbines." His class has been learning about green energy at school, and turbines are the newest point of contention in Wyoming. Some say coal bed methane brings up salty water, and wind turbines ruin the view that so many flocking to Wyoming crave. They look like crosses, no? There's a church near their home in Casper that has 3 large crosses like sentries posted outside their building. When they first drove by it, Chitra and Raja had thought they were drying clothes on one of them, as the purple cloth was draped on the arms like shawls. Chitra squints out the window. She sees a pump jack. And that fellow then looks like he's bowing to Allah. Prayers abound on the prairie for them. They continue to drive. The pump jack pulls up more oil. When Richard Larson asks if he can wear a sari, Nancy Larson leaves the room with a handful of quilts in her arms like a shield. "You want to see a sari?" Chitra is not sure what to make of his request. Richard Larson laughs nervously. "I'd like to try one on, if that's okay." He's lost some of the bluster she has seen in the office. He looks at his cowboy boots, which are ostrich and stippled like a pimply face. "You mean Nancy wants to try one on?" Chitra is still confused and wondering if this is a kind of trick. She wonders if this has something to do with Raja at work. Richard Larson is embarrassed, but then he gains back some of the bravado she has heard when he calls their house looking for the senator. It's like those people you talked about in India at the Christmas party. Chitra thinks back to the holiday party, and she remembers the white elephant drinking glasses of wine the color of rosewater, but she doesn't catch his drift. And then she remembers her talk of hijras and how she found them happy while Raja found them a nuisance. Chitra, I'm going to show you something. He pronounces her name Chitra. She follows him into the basement, past a pool table, and more deer watching them in a solemn line. He takes her into a room with wood-paneled walls. The floor is concrete. In the room are several large safes, or what Chitra thinks are safes. This is where I keep my guns, he says, pointing to a safe. Kids, I told the senator if he takes up hunting, he needs to get something like this. You don't want Harry there getting into guns. Nancy and Richard have one other child besides Luke, a girl named Gretchen Larson. She is in the army and stationed in Germany. There is a narrow door with a lone padlock on it in the room. Richard Larson takes a ring of keys from his pocket and opens the lock. It is a small room, meant at one time as a kind of pantry. Inside is a little vanity with an oval mirror. A bench is tucked neatly in the middle. On the surface of the table is a wide array of makeup, compacts, eyeshadows that look like an artist's palette, brushes of all sizes, lipsticks lined up like bullets. There is a full-length mirror next to the vanity. It is also oval and swivels on its wooden base. A stained glass floor lamp stands in the other corner, and next to it is a plush chair. But unlike the cloud chairs from the living room, this one has a Victorian feel. It is an elegant chair, light mauve with a kind of paisley pattern. It's not a Nancy Larson chair. There are framed paintings on the walls, and again they are different. They are of flowers, of English cottages with thatched roofs. But the thing that delights her the most is a metal bookcase. Lined up are mannequin heads all in a row. On each of the heads sits a blonde wig in various hairstyles, a straight bob, a curly bob, long Rapunzel-like hair, and a cut with layers framing the face. The mannequins line up and look like the deer heads they passed on the way into the room, watching and taking it all in. Chitra does not say anything because she is genuinely unsure of what to say. This is a condition she felt a lot in Toronto, but since being in Wyoming, she has lost this to some degree. She appreciates not having anyone ask her why Hari is losing his Bengali, why she now cooked burgers, and didn't she know Japanese cars were the way to go. Richard Larson walks back into the room with the safes and turns the dials of one. Chitra half expects he's going to show her his guns as if they are similar to the display of makeup. But when Richard Larson opens the heavy door of the gun safe, it's like he's opened a closet. Inside is a rack of dresses. They're beautiful. They're the kind of dresses she has seen on TV, the kind of dresses as a little girl in India she thought American women wore. Her biggest disappointment since arriving in Wyoming is seeing how sloppy women are. Inside the grocery store, she marvels at the loose sweatpants and stained winter coats most women wear. She has to give it to Nancy Larson. She is matchy but dresses well. There are dresses with sequins that look like silver fishes. There are taffeta dresses in which the fabric whorls in discrete patterns. There is a suit with Native American beadwork in the shape of flowers. There are slips like valentines hanging on padded hangers. Richard Larson, who for the most part has been quiet, says this: "I'm not gay, and I love my wife." Chitra nods. "Nancy has known about this since before we got married. That's 24 years now, and she's okay with it. You have to know I'm not gay. I just like to put these things on. It's not like your country. People don't consider it lucky." Chitra touches a pink satin dress. It is strapless and has a large bow on the waist. Along the hem is lace. She wants to explain the complexities of hijras, their place, but instead she just strokes the dress. "Okay," she answers. Richard Larson sees her face. "Would you like to try it on?" When they arrive at the graduation, they are late. They are unsure where to park and end up walking in circles around the university campus. Chitra is wearing an orange sari and slip-on heels, so she struggles to keep up with Hari and Raja, who are both in sports coats, press pants, and ties. "Do you want to go to school here?" she yells up to Hari. Hari turns around and gives her a pained look. "Baba says I'll go to school in India, to IIT. Why would I go here?" Chitra has no answer. She knows that school, Hari's schooling, should be her singular focus, and that is why she has held off on having other children. Raja wants more. She thinks of the IUD she had put in Toronto, her secret, her own broken cartwheeling cross inside her uterus. It gave her a kind of power, a kind of energy. When they find the stadium, they do not sit with the Larsons. Luke Larson is graduating in engineering, and he'll come back to Casper at the end of the summer and begin to work at the same firm as Raja and Richard. The Sens sit in hardback seats and hold a program embossed with the logo of the university. Inside is row upon row of names. Hari plays a pocket video game. If the ceremony is having an influence on his future academic career, it does not show. Chitra and Raja watch as speeches are given, a woman sings, and the graduates file out on the stadium floor just like a movie. As they walk out, the graduates walk 2 by 2, and in their black gowns and tasseled hats, they look like walking lamps. Their faces beam. They look fresh-faced and ready for the future. Chitra finds she is strangely happy and excited for these young people, for their accomplishments, for the future that lies before them. She follows their name in the program. She takes pictures of graduates she does not know. Chitra decides that day in the basement not to try on the dress. Instead, Richard Larson takes her back into the little room and shows her albums of himself in various outfits. When he wears dresses, he likes to be called Clara, and Clara, from what Chitra can tell, is demure, everything Richard Larson is not. She imagines that Nancy Larson has taken most of these photos, and most of them have been taken in the wood-paneled safe room. There are pictures of Clara in suits, in dresses, even a velour tracksuit. The only sari Chitra has is the one she's wearing, and so until she can next come over, she gives Richard Larson a taste of what wearing a sari is like. When they go back upstairs, she picks up one of Nancy Larson's quilts. It's a log cabin quilt, all in shades of blue and green. It's thick and awkward, but Chitra drapes the quilt around him like a faux sari. It will look like this, she laughs, and Richard laughs with her, as the weight and the bulk of a quilt are nothing like a sari. She feels amazingly light for knowing this about Richard Larson. The secret moves inside her. Nancy Larson does not appear again on that visit, and Richard Larson shows Chitra out, and she promises to bring back the purple sari for him to try on. Richard Larson does not ask her not to tell Raja about this request, but she knows not to. It is unspoken between them, because this kind of thing can get you killed in Wyoming. The ceremony is long, and when it's over, they meet at Luke Larson's apartment. It is near the university. The apartment is filled with other Larsons and Nancy's family, who are Boyds. The Sens are one of the first to arrive, and since they've never been to a graduation party, they all sit quietly in the corner until Richard and Nancy Larson arrive. Senator Chitra Harry, Richard Larson exclaims their names when he arrives. He is wearing a kind of suit with the same cowboy boots he wears most days. Around his neck is a bolo tie with a turquoise stone. He has a large elk tooth ring on his finger. Nancy Larson is wearing a flowered dress. She smiles a thin smile at the Sens. It is Raja who speaks for them. He must be so proud of Luke. Such a lot of graduates, what a sight. He's genuinely happy for Luke Larson and wishes his wife would also show some more spirit. Yes, you all get some food now, says Richard. He doesn't look at Chitra, which disappoints her. She has picked the orange sari because she knows Richard Larson will appreciate it. Western women just seem to notice a sari's color, but Richard Larson notices the intricacies of a sari, the weave, the fabric, the zari work. In fact, Richard Larson is the only person who has asked her anything beyond, are they hard to wear? When Chitra goes back to the Larsons, she brings a suitcase of saris. She has the purple one from the Christmas party, but she also packs a variety of saris. For fun, she puts in a salwar kameez and a box of jewelry, which she has removed from the small safe they keep in the cupboard in their bedroom. It also holds their passports and visas. Nancy Larson lets her in. Again, they have coffee alone. They eat lemon bars. Chitra finds herself driving the conversation, and they don't mention the purpose of her visit. You must be missing Gretchen, so far away, she asks. Yes, but we email. The clock's ticking punctuates her sentences. Nancy Larson is not a talker. Richard appears as they are finishing their coffee, and this time Raja is in Cheyenne, but will be back later that night. How do you like this weather, he asks. It's been snowing on and off for days, and now the streets are a slushy mess. Chitra is still new at driving, and Richard Larson knows this. I have to get a big broom to clean the car and wear boots. Chitra lifts up her sari to reveal a new pair of brown leather boots. She had put on a sari especially for the visit, but had spent the week in sweats and jeans. She suddenly understood the woman at the grocery store. Chitra motions to the suitcase. I've brought many choices. She walks over and opens the suitcase and begins to spread the saris out on the same chair where Nancy showed her quilts. She unfolds the sari to show the palus, which are rich in decoration. She has a Kanchipuram silk sari, a handloom sari, a block-printed sari, saris with fake crystals affixed in patterns like stars. She likes showing someone her clothes. In Toronto, she worried about her saris weren't fancy enough, but here, spread across the upholstery, they look sumptuous, like wealth. Richard Larson takes them all in. He runs his hands over his silks, the cottons, even the rayons. He is quiet. It is Nancy Larson who breaks the silence. I could make a nice quilt with these, she says. I think I'll stop there. Thank you. So thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed being here. Thanks.
Give it up one more time for Nina. Please join us upstairs where we'll have a book signing, and we will be back here 2 weeks from now with poet Vaye Van Cleef Stefanen. So we look forward to seeing you then. Until then, have a nice night.